Our next guest is Ismael Contreras. Ismael Contreras serves as a Chief Deputy Appointment Secretary in Governor Newsom's office, advancing from his role as Deputy Appointment Secretary 2022 to 2024. His legislative experience includes key position with California State Assembly, where he served as legislative director to Assemblymember Kevin McCarty and legislative assistant to Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez. A UC Berkeley graduate with degrees in political science and history, Ismael hails from Los Angeles. Outside the office, you will find him cheering for the Dodgers and Lakers, exploring backyard trails and sampling local breweries. Local breweries, that's fantastic. So without further ado, Ismael, are you on?
Yeah, I'm right here. Hey, Bobby, how's it going?
I am doing fantastic. So welcome to SDAC. And please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and thank you, Bobby, for the quick introduction, and for the invitation as well to chat with all these folks here in today's call. I think the real impetus for me joining today is to sort of talk a little bit about what potential opportunities are out there to serve on state boards and commissions. I know a lot of us are state workers, and interact with a lot of some of these boards and commissions, if not working for them directly. And so, beyond your state service as a state employee, there are potential opportunities to go on and serve on a board or a commission, whether it is now while you're still working with the state, or maybe down the line once you've left, but you still want to contribute and give back in terms of public service. Service on a board or commission is one of those options as well. And so I just wanted to briefly go over a couple of things. First, talk about what that service entails, right? Time commitment, and what to expect. And also what the process entails as well, about how to get onto a board or commission and how to even find out what opportunities are out there, right? And so I unfortunately, I don't have any slides. I'm more of a very verbal type of person. So apologies on that front. I will work on developing slides for the future. But just very quickly, one of the things that folks should expect, about serving on a board or a commission is that all the boards are different, right? In terms of time commitment, how often they meet, where they meet. And so, you do have a wide spectrum of options to pick from. But one of the things we tell folks before you start looking into board services is to do a little bit of introspection about how much time you can actually give. For context, some boards and commissions meet on a monthly basis. Sometimes their meetings are 2 days in length for several hours. Other boards and commissions meet once a year for about 4 or 5 hours, right? So there's great variance in how much time commitment is required to attend the meetings themselves. On top of that, some boards and commissions have very extensive reading materials that you need to review in advance of those board meetings. Others, it's not as extensive and is manageable. Just a couple of hours of reading leading up to that board or commission meeting. So it's important to kind of do a little bit of self-reflection about how much time you can commit. The other thing that folks should be aware that is related to serving on a board or commission is that sometimes it might require some travel. Fortunately, right now there's some flexibility to participate remotely. I think the legislature has been reviewing potential options to extend that down the line. But I do want to be upfront and transparent that the opportunity to participate remotely is not a permanent exemption. So it is something that folks need to be cognizant that they may have to travel to some of these board meetings. And the location varies, right? A good number of them do meet in Sacramento. Others meet in different parts of the state in order to enable public participation. So they may be in Los Angeles, they may be in the Bay Area. They meet in the Central Valley. There are definitely a lot of different places where they meet. So my recommendation is to think about how much travel you're able to do, right? And think about looking up into where they meet, right? And how frequently they meet. And the last part that I want to say about what service entails is that we want folks to be committed to the work, right? The governor isn't going to appoint someone that isn't interested in the commission's work, isn't willing to go to every other meeting. Of course, we understand emergencies come up, but at the end of the day, you are sitting in that seat because you provide a different perspective, a different voice that is necessary, that will help our boards and commissions make the best decisions possible for Californians, right? So with that being said, what we do is we encourage folks to go on the governor's website. I will be sure to include those links in the chat a little bit later, but there is a section on the governor's website that lists out what boards and commissions are out there. Do a little bit of research. Go through the list. I know it's a very long list, but you should go through the list. And if there's anything that stands out, read through some of the paper or documents that we have on our website that describe the duties and responsibilities of that board or commission. Go to their website, read through some agendas, and talk to yourself and ask yourself, is this something that I see myself enjoying to do, right? On our website, we also have a list of vacancies that are currently existing on those boards and commissions. We update those on a monthly basis. So definitely take a look at that vacancy list to get a sense of what is out there currently right now. One of the things I tell folks is that, a lot of the appointments process is really timing, right? There might be a board or commission that you're in love with and that you think you'd be the perfect fit for. But perhaps there isn't a seat that doesn't open up for another year or two, right? So a lot of it is timing, and we do ask people to be a little bit patient, with that process. But take your time and make sure that you're doing the research on what boards and commissions you're interested in. And once you know what you want to do, go ahead and submit an application and indicate which boards or commissions you're interested in. And on that application, you'll talk about your work history, your educational history, but you also get a chance to talk about who you are as a person. I'd say that that's probably the most important part of an application. The governor really cares about who you are as a person outside of your job, because that informs what perspective you bring to the table, the type of voice you're going to bring, right? And so I always tell people when they're applying is to focus more on telling your story and sharing why you're drawn to, potentially going on this board or commission and giving your service back to the public. The other thing that folks should do is once you've submitted an application is to reach out to us directly. Our contact information is on the governor's website. Shoot us an email. If we don't respond, it's probably because our inboxes are inundated, but you should definitely follow up or give us a call, and we'll do our best to set up some time to chat through and talk about what potential opportunities might be out there. But it's definitely an iterative process to get on a board or commission. Last thing I want to say before I wrap up here is that just for matters of setting expectations here, not everyone will get an appointment, and I try to be very upfront about that with people. There are a ton of folks that are going to be interested for a board or commission appointment. Everybody will have a unique story or perspective that they might bring. And unfortunately, we can't appoint everyone that, submits an application, right? And so what we tell people is if you're really dedicated to giving back, and you're unfortunately not successful, don't give up. You may never know. There might be an opportunity that comes up down the road. And if you're persistent, you're top of mind for us. And so we'll definitely keep you in mind as potential opportunities come up later in the process. So, with that, I'll sort of wrap up, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director of Appointment Ismael Contreras. That That was helpful. One question that came up in chat, are there any current efforts to help people with disabilities and specifically people with IDD to serve on boards and commissions that are not necessarily directly connected to the disability field?
That is a wonderful question, because I know there are a number of boards and commissions where we do have slots that are specifically for folks with disabilities or with IDD, right? And we tend to pigeonhole people, which is not the intent of, this governor, and it's not the intent of our unit. I think there is always an opportunity to expand those options for folks that do have disabilities to serve elsewhere, right? You're a part of society, and you aren't pigeonholed to just one specific experience, right? And so I think when folks apply and they're interested in that board or commission, we'll definitely have a conversation with them and learn more about why you're drawn to that work, right? It is something that we are trying to be cognizant of in all regards, in terms of, when we look at a board or commission, we look at the composition of that board and we say, who's missing at the table? What voice do we need to add to that table, right? And as a part of that process, we do need to think, and we do think about folks with disabilities and how they can contribute to the mission of that board or commission. So it's definitely part of a more holistic process, but it is something that it's a work in progress. I'll be honest about that. But it's something that we are also willing to hear back in terms of feedback from other folks about how can we actually be more cognizant about that. So I told Bobby, my door is always open, my email is always open, so I'm always happy to have conversations. I know my colleagues are as well. And so if you have ideas on how we can, perhaps improve our processes in that regard, we're all ears.
The other question that came up is, how closely do you collaborate with state agencies during the appointment process?
That's a wonderful question. And we actually work really closely with our department and agency counterparts. Boards and commissions, for the most part, aren't just floating out there on their own, right? They have a parent department or a parent agency. So we work really closely with the executive director, with our counterparts at the agency level, to first have a discussion about, okay, what do we need on that specific board or commission in terms of, dedication, what type of perspective, what's missing, right? But we also, when we're interviewing candidates, we do give the executive directors and our department and agency counterparts the opportunity to meet with those candidates. Because at the end of the day, they're going to have a working relationship if they're appointed to the board or commission. So in order to start developing that relationship, our EDs and our agency folks will interview those candidates, will have conversation with those candidates, before they meet with us here in the governor's office. And so we engage with them really closely.
So it starts with the executive director and then it flows into the governor's office, right?
That's correct. Yes. So executive directors and department staff, agency staff will meet and interview those candidates. And then you would interview with us here in the governor's office.
Another question that came up in chat is on a separate but related issue. When the governor mandated that workers return to office, RTO, 2 days per week, the mandate parenthetically referenced that reasonable accommodation needs should be considered. However, this was only included, and we are seeing that most every department is denying full-time telework, even for workers who had full-time telework before COVID. It feels to many workers like a statewide conspiracy. This is what's in the chat. To deny FEHA rights. Will the governor agree to issue a follow-up to the mandate to ensure that telework requests under FEHA are examined in an appropriate manner and not denied out of hand due to the RTO mandate?
That's a very complicated question. I appreciate it. But it is definitely something that, I think our Department of Human Resources in collaboration and in conversation with our labor partners, should be having. If they might be happening, they might not. I'm not sure. I'm not in those nitty-gritty details. But I do appreciate folks bringing that up.
Great. So that's basically, it's out of your wheelhouse, that question.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Vance has his hand up. Vance, go ahead, unmute and ask.
Excuse me, my name's Mary. Somehow my ID came up as Vance Taylor. That's actually my supervisor. I apologize. My question kind of ties together Rihanna's comment in the chat with the question that was just posed. When it comes to serving on a board or a commission, what kind of reasonable accommodations are considered? For example, is meeting remotely commonplace so that individuals with mobility issues could participate without actually showing up at the meeting? Are the materials offered in accessible formats? In this way, we would be encouraging individuals with disabilities and access and functional needs to be participating in those boards and commissions. Thank you.
That's a wonderful question. On the first half of your question related to accommodations to attend meetings remotely, unfortunately we can't govern by fiat, right? And just wave a magic wand and say we need to have all meetings remote or partially remote for folks that require it. I think our appointments unit, we wish we could. We definitely see value in allowing our boards and commissions to have at least definitely a portion of our members attend remotely, because it enables us to appoint people that have different backgrounds from different parts of the state, folks that need those accommodations, that might have a disability that maybe make it really difficult for them to get to a board meeting 300, 400 miles away, right? So it's definitely something that us in the appointments unit, we are supportive of. Ultimately, we have another partner that we have to work with. It is something that needs to be codified in state law. And so it is a conversation that needs to happen within the legislature as well. And I know there's been attempts in the past to make it more accessible and easier for folks to participate remotely. But at this time, we just have to work with what is currently existing within law, which I believe right now is we still have that flexibility to allow up to half of the board members or commission members to attend remotely. On the second half, that is a great question. I know that there are a couple of requirements for boards and commissions to make their meeting materials accessible in different formats for folks to read through them and engage with the board and commission. I'm happy to look into what steps we're currently taking in these regards and figure out where we can potentially improve. So I'm happy to look into that matter as well.
Thank you so much. And I know we have a hard stop at 10, so I'm not going to keep you beyond and push you into, violating your deadline there. So I thank you so much for coming here. Please come back and see us anytime and provide us the wealth of information that you just shared. By the way, the Deputy Secretary of Appointment also posted the website where you can go and look for these vacant positions for boards and commissions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bobby, for the invitation. And like I said to folks, we're accessible. I will also post my contact information and the list, the link to the contact information for some of the other deputies. And so you can see the portfolios that they have, and maybe if there's a board or commission you're interested in their portfolio, you can reach out to them directly as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Have yourself a terrific day, and thanks again for showing up at SDAC. All right, that was Deputy Secretary of Appointment Ismael Contreras. Very informative presentation.